doing?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you, Sam?
I am excellent. We were just chatting before we started here, and the title is Living in Harmony Through Chaos. We did so much pre-editing and stuff like that. Even with our intro music and all that kind of stuff, we would do a recording, and then we would have to go into the studio to edit it. So we'd have to pull over the intro and the outro, and it came over as two files. And then, of course, the recording file came over as a third file. And just had a oh duh moment one time when we're looking at it and it says put your recording anyway. So took a little bit of chaos away there, but we were talking in this time of the year. Let's face it, it's the end of February. A lot of people, or April, it's the beginning of April. People have got their credit card bills from Christmas. We're through the first quarter. We just had some, major changes in governments. Regardless of what side of the aisle you come down on, there's a lot of things that are way up in the air, right?
Well, there always isn't a transition of.
Yeah. And will things wash out and get back to what is normal? Probably so. Where that is, though, we don't know, right?
Right.
And so those are things that the only control that we have over is our vote. But now, in our own lives, how do we live in harmony through all the chaos?
It's spring, so we're probably in the end of spring breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Taxes are due next week.
Yep.
And who knows how that's going to go since there have been some cuts there. Yep. I'm hoping that means I have more time to pay.
Yep.
If you've got seniors, graduation's just around the corner.
Yeah.
Spring is coming. Everybody, there's the hustle bustle. Lydia and our friend Monica did a complete house cleaning out downstairs. They cleaned everything, got rid of all the stuff we don't need down there. I'm trying to go through and do a purge of clothes, of doing a purge of my contacts, my phone. There are people on this phone that I think have been dead for years, let alone I haven't talked to, right? Once it's in there, it stays, right? Because you can't remember who it is, so you don't get rid of it.
Right.
And that's just all the normal things that we have to do.
Yeah. We were talking, both of us, we do plan. We do have a daily plan. We have a weekly plan, monthly plan. When we were talking, I have a benefit from working part-time at the cruise terminal. And that is with Carnival Cruises, I get 2 free cruises a year. And you have to apply for them, and we've been approved. And, however, it's cruise and standby. It's spring break. We almost always have cancellations. I wish I could turn my camera around to show you what my office looks like, because all my clothes are laid out. They're not packed yet, and I'll have to pack them because if it's standby and you don't know until, the last minute, and I'm working that day. So I'll go to work just like normal and everything else. And my wife will come down later, but we don't know if we're going or not. Right. And so I did cancel one appointment because I wanted to be able to have somebody to be able to take that appointment, because it was a pre-op appointment, and, to make that available to somebody else, and scheduled it for next week. But even though the port knows that I'm on the schedule for a cruise, they scheduled me all next week. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I have to, the scheduling system is crazy. If I turn it down, then I get moved to the bottom of the list for, anyway, it's a crazy thing. But so I accepted them. And then if I get on the cruise, then obviously I'll text them and say no. But then I have a whole bunch of other things that I just feel like everything's up in the air especially with my business. Now I'll take my laptop with me and I'll be able to do some things, but talk about trying to, there's no balance there, right?
None whatsoever.
It's typical life, and we can either live in harmony. I was out running some errands today, and at 1:35, my reminder for our 1:30 meeting popped up. I'm like, even my phone is not in balance, right? And so,
Yeah, that's bad when the reminders are like, I
yeah,
don't even know
when a
how that
reminder's
happens.
late, right?
Everything is controlled somewhere else.
Yeah. And I went in and I looked, and of course, there was the text from you. So I called you. And so, but if we get upset about it,
And
all it does is cause all sorts of issues, right? Health
and
issues,
getting
stress.
upset doesn't change it, and it doesn't fix it.
No,
Now, there are things that you can get upset about that you can turn that upset into a positive and move in a direction to to ensure it doesn't happen again. But
right.
we can't change what's already happened.
No, no.
And for me, like, how cool is it to be, when we were younger, we'd have never been able to take a cruise standby if we had kids at home, right?
No,
You just
right.
to have that kind of flexibility to me, that's really exciting. Do I get to go? You know, I see people that fly standby all the time, and I'm like,
Mhm.
if I'm going to an event, I don't want to take a chance that I'm not going to get there, right?
Right.
Now if you're just flying because you've got time and you don't care where you go or how long you're gone or when you get
Right.
there,
Yeah.
and it's the college age kids and in that age group that do that. And I thought, but that's kind of fun. You can just go see where
Yeah.
you might want to go.
Yeah,
Sit
and if
down
you've
for
got
some
time to sit
time and
around the
either get on
airport
or
and
you don't.
wait, and with all the devices, with all the distractions, here's the one thing that I've been kind of impressed with in the last, especially with the spring breakers, is younger people getting off the ships with a book in their hand.
Nice.
And I'm like, now, you expect that for people from our generation and maybe from their 50s forward or whatever. But when I'm seeing 20s and 20 and 30-year-olds, now I'm not a real great judger of age, but that's where they appear, getting off with a book in their hand, and obviously they've been reading it. I had one lady got off, and she's probably her mid-20s, and she had obviously been reading it right before they went to get off the ship, because she actually had it folded. It was a paperback and
Uh,
folded over to where she was holding it at her page, right? And
nice.
I'm like, they make bookmarks for things like that, but you know,
It sounds like she was in a hurry.
she was in, yeah, apparently whoever she was debarking with was one of those, let's go now. And she didn't have time to put it away, but it was really, but I have been encouraged by that because, all too often, you see all these things on the internet where I saw one the other day where they supposedly were interviewing, um, folks who had just graduated college. A couple of them were supposed to be first time educators. And, uh, um, the one of the questions was, who won the Civil War? Well, this young lady says, well, I'm assuming the civilians won it because it was a civil war, and so it must have been between the civilians and the government.
And she's an educator?
Yes.
Oh my.
And so I'm thinking, what's
Obviously
this?
not a history educator.
Yeah, I guess not. So, but then there were a couple other questions, and so and sometimes you wonder, especially on the internet, whether it was something that was manufactured, which could very well be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But then again, when you talk to even some people that are my age and stuff like that down at the port, you look at them and you're like, people I work with, you wonder, how have you made it this long in life? And so, but I don't, with so you guys are didn't I hear you guys were getting ready for another winter storm?
The mountains are getting snow.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, and we got snow last night and on and off today, but I mean it only stuck like to the grass and stuff. I mean
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
warm before that. Um, But no, we're supposed to get some up there. And, that's perfect because that's where our water comes from.
Mhm, mhm.
So I'm very happy. And as long as we get some moisture down here, I don't care what kind it
Yeah,
is. You
yeah,
know,
you need snowpack. Yeah.
we don't turn our sprinklers on or anything like that until well into May.
Yeah, we
Um,
had 90 degrees last week a couple times, so the sprinkler systems are on.
well, we got warm, but we also know that this comes back. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want broken pipes. But then it doesn't get that cold either. And if you're
yeah.
running a sprinkler and it's below freezing and you run it for 2 minutes, it'll keep your pipes from freezing. So
Right, right, right.
then you have ice all over it.
But even the weather can cause this chaos in a heartbeat, you know? We'll get, for example, here shortly, we'll go into our rainy season and people forget how to drive. And you say, well, it's just rain, Sam. Yeah, but all summer since hurricane season ended, pretty much it's been light rains. It hasn't been heavy rains and stuff like that. So there's oil from,
Yeah,
exhaust and stuff like that on the ground. Those first couple rains, the roads are slick.
they do get slick. And
Yeah.
what I've always thought was interesting is that the weather causes chaos.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And, back in the day when you were just driving everywhere, it wasn't quite so bad. But, people are like, well, the weather's not bad here. Why are the flights delayed? Well, because where they're flying out of,
Right,
it's not safe for them to fly.
right.
And that's one of the things I've always been in awe of is, people complain about how the airlines, oh, they're not on time. I don't know why things get mixed up. But if you think about the complexity of the travel systems they have to put
Oh my
together,
goodness, yes.
um, to me, it's a feat of genius. I mean, just even be able to think of what the algorithm and the probing would have to be
Mhm,
like
mhm.
to
Yep.
make not just for an airline, but for all the planes.
Right, right. Well, and think of the backup. So here a couple of weeks ago, there was an issue at Heathrow.
Right,
No
right.
big deal. Heathrow, who cares? Busiest airport in the world,
Yeah,
all the hubs, everything. So, and the reason that I bring it up is we had a couple of Canadians, nice guys, and they were checking in. I was talking to them. They had come down from Toronto, and they were tired. I said, "Well, didn't you come down a day early?" He said, "Well, we started out a day early." And they were cool. I mean, it was an adventure to them, and this is the way we have
right,
to look at it. They could have been totally frazzled, frustrated, and everything. They were tired. They were tired because they had a couple of delays and stuff like that. And when they got the timing for their last flight, they knew they were going to make it, right?
right.
And so he said, we couldn't see getting upset. We have travel insurance. We did this and we did that. And they did
Right.
everything right. And he says, everywhere we went, the weather was great. I have no idea. Well, first off, they're flying international.
Right.
We don't think of Canada as being international, but it is.
Oh, they have
And
international flights, of course.
yeah. And so, and I said, well, and this was right after the thing in Heathrow. I said, well, you do realize that there was like 1,500 flights delayed out of Heathrow. Oh man, they hadn't watched the news in like 2 days.
Right.
And
So they're like,
so,
"Oh, okay, well, that might
yeah,
make
and
sense."
so then it made sense to them. But they weren't frazzled. I mean, they were there in plenty of time to check in and go get on board the ship and enjoy their vacation.
And, the thing is getting upset about the weather postponing things or affecting things, there is nothing.
Mm-mm.
I mean, there isn't anything you can change about that.
No,
You just
no.
you just can't. So, be in harmony with the fact that regardless of your travel plans, something might come up. Just,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
I take my whole office fits in my backpack. So if
Yeah.
something happens and I'm stuck somewhere, I've got plenty to do. I've got plenty
Right.
to read. I've got plenty to listen to.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm set.
Yeah.
I could use more, like maybe blankets or pillows or something, but I'm not going to take my bed with me on the plane,
Right. Right.
you know. But I mean, it's an hour flight from Denver to Omaha, and I know that there can be something that could delay that, you know,
Yeah.
especially flying into Omaha in the summer. It's, you may have to go way around to avoid some bad storms, and they may still not let you land.
Yep. Just because of the weather. Yeah.
Tornadoes are you don't want to land in those, and you don't want to take off in those. It's not going
No,
to
no,
happen.
no, no. Same way with hurricanes.
Yep. Nope. Yep. Yeah. Thunder, lightning, if the lightning's real bad, no, they're not taking off because the plane's like a great big lightning rod.
Oh yeah. 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 That's right. That's right.
No,
People
thank
don't,
you.
they don't, well, it's only raining. No, you don't see that. You
No.
hear that thunder? Yeah. There's lightning with it
And even
somewhere.
if we can't see it, they're checking it upstairs. That's what their
Yep.
job is.
Yep.
They know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Let them do their job.
Yeah. And,
And
and, and so
yes,
the biggest thing with the harmony side of it is how do we act through it all? If we're reacting, then
yeah,
we're going to really throw our lives out of kilter.
and it's more stressful. And I mean, you can't stop that initial
Yeah.
gut
Right.
reaction, but then pause, take a deep breath, or 5 or 10,
Yeah. Well,
depending.
and that's your first word there was just perfect. It's, pause, stop, just step back and look at the whole situation because, it's like those two guys coming down from Toronto. They
Yeah,
were able to make their connections, but if they've got, let's face it, the guy on the other side of the counter or the gal on the other side of the counter, they don't control the weather either.
they have nothing to do.
Hmm.
All they can do is tell you what's going on and try to rebook you.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
that's all that they can help with. There's nothing else they can do.
Right. And so we just have to understand that our actions and our reactions cause chain reactions.
Yes.
You know, I was doing a lesson for my another podcast that I have, and I was talking about the ripple effect. You know, um, the ripples that we create, positively or negatively, are all part of our legacy. They're all part of who we are, and what we leave behind. If you stop and think about it, those ripples could affect generation after generation just because we acted positively and kindly towards somebody. I
Yeah.
always I always tell people that, hey, what are you going to do with the divine appointments that are coming your way? I believe that every person we come in contact with is a divine appointment. God ordained that person to be in front of us. Maybe all they need from me that at that point in time is a smile, right? And how does that ripple affect them? How does that ripple affect their life that day, right? And so we need to create a ton of ripples every day.
And I think, we don't even realize the ripples that we create
No, no.
and what they lead to.
Hmm.
In my head, I'm trying to remind myself that every ripple could turn into a tsunami, so I better place carefully.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. We don't want to create the tsunamis in life that destroy, but we want to create the ripples that create. And I think that when we determine to live a harmonious life and accept the things that come that we can't change, you know, and be able to move forward in all of that, then life becomes so much easier to live. It took me too stinking long to learn that lesson, Linda.
Me too. And to be honest, it's not just easier, it's more enjoyable.
Yes.
It's more impactful.
That's it. Enjoyable and impactful. And I look at my early life, and it's like I might have made some ripples, but I know they turned into tsunamis. You know,
And we all go through that. That's part of the human condition,
it
and it's
is.
how we learn.
Yep, it
Um,
is.
I just know that when I think back to how I've changed over the years,
Mhm.
it's kind of funny because when we moved away and we only saw family like on the holidays and
Mhm.
stuff, I hadn't realized how much I changed. And they're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Well,
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
And the things I broke free from were not anything that they did to me.
Hmm.
I did them to myself, but it was in relation to where I was.
Right.
And
Right.
really, the only way for me to break free from that was to move. And, nobody ever did anything to me.
Hmm.
I made myself miserable. I didn't need anybody else's help,
Yeah, I didn't need anybody else's help either.
you know?
Yep.
And when I look back and see how I was able to do that, I think that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments I've ever had in my life,
Hmm.
was being able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the one I have to revisit every time I'm struggling with something. It's like, you were able to do this. You
Yeah.
can do that.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, Linda, this has been an interesting discussion. So, folks, are you living in harmony through the chaos of your life? That's our question for you today. Linda, it's been a pleasure today.
Great to see you again, Sam.
Yep. So, y'all live intentionally, be very, very blessed. We'll see you on the next show.